Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa. And it's Monday. And today we have a brand new guest with us who I'm sure is no stranger to many of our viewers, Miles Johnston, Mr. Miles Johnston, Irishman, the founder of the Basis Project. So we're going to be having a super interesting conversation with Miles, regarding there's so many topics that Miles and I could be talking about, but we're going to be doing more than one show. And today we're going to be talking about his time in the media and how the media controls, manipulates. Wow, very, very interesting. Look forward to this conversation. But before we do, let's just look at our weekly schedule. Okay, so we have Miles Johnston on right now. And then we have Danny. It's Danny Henderson's birthday today. It's mine tomorrow. So we're going to be talking about all sorts of cool things. So join us at 6 p.m. Central Africa time or SAST, South African Standard Time, wherever that is. But it's 2 hours from now. Join us there. Yes, and tomorrow there'll be a little birthday special. I pre-recorded something for you guys. So I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be out gallivanting tomorrow. It's Grandma's Big 6-0. So we're doing things tomorrow. Looking forward to that. Just going to be hanging out with some friends. But I will see you back on Wednesday with Double Trouble with Jessie. Look forward to that as well. Again, in the field with Shanti on Thursday. Join me for that. We'll be looking at part 2 of Milk and Honey. The land of milk and honey. Is that an external destination, or is it a place within, an understanding within, right? And then, of course, on Friday, back with me is the lovely Lynn Monet. He's been doing amazing things. Lynn Monet's been a guest several times in the past. She's also been a guest with Jay Marzinsky, an ex-psych nurse, also with amazing spiritual gifts, and how she is using and used that in her life as a healer. Amazing lady. So join me with Lynn Monet on Friday evening. Then there's the book club with Jessie. That's still the book of Daniel. That's going to be dropped on Sunday. And the Sunday loop again. And then, of course, Sunday evening, new guest, J.R. Sweet. Join me for him. He's the Mormon monarch, the survivor who's well known for speaking out about his experiences as a Mormon and what's happened there. So great lineup this week, everybody. Join me. Like, share, subscribe, please. Get the channel's algorithms up and running. And you can see the rain is pouring down there. My hair's sticking up in 27,000 different directions. But hey, I'm here, right? And without any further ado, taram, Mr. Miles Johnston. Miles, so good to have you on Aquarius Rising.
Well, this is a big
Welcome.
deal.
How are you?
This is a big deal.
Yeah.
Now, I noticed you announced 2 birthdays, right? Now, ladies and gentlemen, when you have two people, two troublemakers, and let's face it, Chantel and Beverly, and big troublemakers, both sort of born within a no, not Beverly, Danny. Oh, that Danny, she's a troublemaker, and she's born on, I think practically the same day. Well, there's another couple of troublemakers. I've got a friend, very lovely. She's very eloquently spoken, called Jane Shattuck. Now she talks more posh, like what the Queen did, and forget about the King, right? She was born on Friday, and she went to a double birthday, a treble birthday on Friday, right? And she does all these marches and stuff in London and speaks so eloquently that no policeman could ever possibly arrest her. Well, we haven't, you see. So I spot a pattern here. That's at least 4 troublemakers causing trouble, born within a day or two. Now, that's by divine guidance.
I love it. And you know what it is, really, when you're looking at the astrology of the heavens, we are entering the age of Aquarius, and I'm a double
We've been
Aquarian.
doing that ever since 1965.
I think it's really, like any woman knows, you're giving birth, you have your birthing pains, right? So it's absolutely, the birthing pains have been the run up. And then I do believe it was actually a year ago, 17th of November or 19th of November, when the actual opening occurred. But hey, on the calendars we're living right now, do we ever really know? But it's wonderful to be here, and it's wonderful to be living at this time and to being offering our shenanigans to the world, because it's fantastic. So yes, join us afterwards for Danny and myself just catching up and being troublemakers.
Just catching up. I take it that's a real girls' party then. She actually asked permission to be on my stage. No, she apologized for. Miles, I'm very sorry. I should have asked permission. It was Gemma Cooper who was hosting. She was in charge. Anyway, I was waving madly at this beautiful woman standing on my beautiful stage, and I was trying to get her into the light. But you stand in the light, So anyway, it was absolutely fantastic. And she interviewed Beverly. She introduced Beverly, and was a really big deal. And the whole thing about Beverly is that she knew the baby farms that a key witness for the Basis Project was born on all those years ago. So that was when two coincidences come together, and that's a big deal. So and that goes back to the original start of the Basis Project. The first witnesses who talked about German experiments that British intelligence found in World War II at the pause of World War II, because we didn't win the war, it continued, and that's something which is very, very important. And you've got George Bush there. And the gentleman at the top is quite an elderly Admiral Carreras. And he's a bit careless. I think he died about 4 times. He was head of the Deutsche Cervenger something or other, Gundes, whatever it is, the DVD, the covert agency that set up Admiral William Carreras in 1943 and resulted in the continued use of World War II and all that stuff after the war. And this is a thick book. And this is to have the President of the United States, also an ex-head of the CIA, also in charge of the DVD, and that all unfeasibly long German word. That's the secret German intelligence as opposed to German intelligence. And it's so secret, most people don't know it exists. And that's a very rare book. And it's published by a friend that's up the road from here. Anyway.
Is it your book? Is it your book, though? Spy Hunter?
It's not my book. It's written by Michael Shrimpton, but it's a new edition, the 3rd edition. And this is I
want to just put it up here in the chats, or if one of my mods can also just catch that. Spy Hunter.
It's called Spy Hunter, The Secret History of German Intelligence.
Spy Hunter.
This is the 3rd edition. It's now properly available.
Of German, and I would love to have a look at that. Right
now, if you want to
3rd edition
names, DVD assets such as Lloyd George, Mao Zedong.
Who's the author?
Michael Shrimpton. He's you can just about see that.
Michael.
He's there. He's a former barrister. I think he's still a barrister. Michael Shrimpton.
Okay, there we go. I've put it up, so let's hope it's the right. There we go. Spy into the Secretaries to German Intelligence,
Scale.
3rd edition by Michael Shrimpton.
Right, now the scale of, now I have to say, he does go on a bit about Bentleys at the start, but essentially the reason why everything's been going badly wrong and people don't realize what's happening is because key institutions are basically nobbled by this agency. We've all heard of the Khazarian mafia, the cabal, the Rothschilds, or you know, the whatever. But a lot of this is because World War II and the key agency behind the 20th century, which extends way into the 1800s and way back further. I mean, you can keep going back, but the key to this is nefarious people doing certain things, and that is a big chunk of the reason why a lot of stuff has happened. For instance, and see, there's another lady called Lucy Wyatt. Now, I interviewed her on Thursday, re-interviewed her on Thursday. She came up with a thing called the Doom Cult, and she goes back to Venice and how these very, very nasty people were thrown out of the very nasty place called the Vatican. So you're talking about one bunch of whatevers throwing out an even worse bunch of whatevers. And they set up this thing called the Doom Cult. And ultimately that leads to the Fabian Society and the Fabian technocratic agenda, which is what the whole green agenda is, and the whole thing, the reason why everything's going on. And ultimately that does end up with ETs and some guy called what's his name? Oh, I've just forgotten. Some guy called well, I've just forgotten, Epstein, right? Now, a lot of this is written in another book. If you get that, that's written by a guy called Bob Osborne, and it's about a place in Cornwall. Okay. You got the two kissing rocks there. Now, the thing about Cornwall is it's full of alien bases, military bases, UFOs, and this is in a place called Zenner. Okay. And that's a church in Zenner. And Zenner was where two of the main ley lines that come into Britain come in through St. Michael's Mount, which is on the south coast. And then, of course, you've got Mount Saint Michel in France, opposite on the other side of down near in France, right? But the key to this is there's an awful lot of German activity in Zenner. This is a tiny place, and also it's a place where mermaids are, right? Actual mermaids. And this is where you got a lot of rock fracturing and a lot of energy fracturing, a place where the miners that mined tin down there, they would hear a thing called the Tommyknockers. If you heard the Tommyknockers, you were going to die. You had to get out. And that's where the Greys and ETs are intricate to the underground bases and facilities down there. And you had the Germans. So what happened was that Bob Osborne bought the ranch or the farm where D.H. Lawrence was expelled from London. And that's where he met, he wrote Women in Love and all that, all those naughty sort of things. And people would think that, oh, the 1960s was really far out and Hey Man and all that. This goes back to secret societies in Switzerland and in Europe. And here we have 1912, the Monte Verite Commune. and they're all dancing stark naked. And these are another bunch of ladies and a whole bunch of this. This is all going down in Zenner. And just up from where D.H. Lawrence was, D.H. Lawrence wasn't, he wasn't doing anything really that antisocial. He was just bonking the direct cousin of the Red Baron, right? Now, we've got a situation where Britain is doing a thing called having what a lovely war with a bunch of people called the Germans, and you've got the Red Baron shooting down British aircraft, right? Meanwhile, D.H. Lawrence is in Zenner bonking the cousin to the Red Baron. Nothing controversial going on here, He's only, So you have all that situation happening, and then just up a few rocks, like a quarter of a mile, there was a place called the Lair, and that's where the Germans were researching the energy lines of what was coming into Britain, because Germany was very, very good at dealing with all the esoteric energy lines going around the planet.
Yes.
And, there's nobody in Germany during the war who had any connection to that. Those SS people, much better uniforms, much better style. So that's just going on round the corner. And then on the other side of the hill, there's a little cairn, which is here somewhere, and you've got some other guy. Nobody really sort of not much going on here. Cornish Pendragon, all this. Anyway, you haven't heard of some guy called Aleister Crowley, have you? He didn't.
Oh yeah, much. We know a lot about Aleister Crowley on this channel.
We haven't heard of him at all. Yeah. Of course, because he was busy doing rituals on this mountaintop or cairn just up the road from where this farm is that Bob Osborne bought, right?
Right.
So you got the Germans doing there, but D.H. Lawrence doing his thing, dancing naked people all around the place, doing a hey man, wow, 120 years before we caught up with all that stuff, right? So all of that sort of stuff was going on in this little place in the southwest of England. And it's the sort of place where if you go out sleepwalking, you can walk from the north coast to the south coast of England. Well, not quite, but it's getting really close to the end of England. So this is all going on down there. And again, this connects the Fabian agenda. And the Fabian agenda, the London School of Economics, is the logo of that. And this is the same thing that Lucy Wyatt talks about, the doom cult. The logo they have is a wolf in sheep's clothing. And that's what we're dealing with right now.
Wow.
So I don't know where that connects me with media right now.
Well, sorry, I want to just put that by Zenner by Bob Osborne. So I'm just going to put that up.
It's Spirit of Place. The book's called Spirit of Place by Bob Osborne.
Oh, Spirit of Place.
He has a very interesting rebel family. And that's the inner Spirit of Place by Rebel Not Taken Publishing.
Bob Osborne. Okay, I'm just going to put that up. You guys should be able to get it because those are definitely.
This connects. This is where it is, sort of down there in Cornwall. Now the coast you're looking at there in the distance is Wales. All right.
Right.
So no, you can't see the coast. And this is meant to be an actual mermaid. Can you see that? I can't see that. I can't see what I'm doing.
Yes, I can. There's a lot of folklore.
Yeah.
There's a lot of folklore around that.
Yes.
Sorry. There's a lot of folklore around the mermaids and stuff. And obviously you are from Northern Ireland. And
Yes.
Ireland is certainly sacred territory.
Yeah.
So
That's where I
I
come
would
from.
actually, I
I
would
mean, it's
love
pirate
to,
radio. We can get onto all that. Okay, that's the
yeah,
book.
yeah. I would definitely love to, in future shows, definitely delve more into the spirituality, the ley lines, etc., around Ireland, because as one of the most ancient cultures around, I think it's been so misunderstood and also weaponized.
Absolutely. And this is the whole point about the DVD. Both the early prime ministers of Ireland, that's De Valera and what's his name, Michael Collins, they were DVD assets way back in the early 1900s. Okay, so the key players in the separation of Ireland were DVD assets. Lloyd George was a DVD asset. Michael Collins was a DVD asset, and De Valera, who kept Ireland back in the backwaters for 50 plus years. And Ireland only broke away from that with a UFO wave, which happened in Ireland around about the 1970s. But key to this was an Irish gentleman called Ronan O'Reilly, who wanted to play some records in the 1960s. And this is where the whole influence of culture has been changed and woken up from. In the early 1960s, Ronan O'Reilly, another troublemaker from Ireland, he produced some records and he wanted to play them on the radio. And in those days, you only had the Irish state broadcaster, and in England, you had the BBC, nothing else. And at night, you had a thing called Radio Luxembourg. Radio Luxembourg was one of the last major international broadcast radio stations that was sort of pre-war. Before the evolution of broadcasting, very few people are on air, and they were broadcasting huge powers. And with amplitude modulation radio, AM radio, if there's nothing else on the air, your signal can really travel. So, for instance, if you look at the Times or the Evening Standard in London during the war or before that time, you'll see listings for New York radio stations or Boston radio stations on the coast of America. But you could hear that on with your radio with an aerial and shortwave and stuff. You could hear that, and they had their programming listed in the London newspapers. So the point is that that kind of, so Radio Luxembourg was ultimately to develop into RTL, and they developed the Astra satellite, which then produced the ability for Rupert Murdoch to transmit multi-channel TV into Europe. And I was involved with that, but that's a different part of the story in terms of media. The bottom line is that you couldn't, Ronan O'Reilly could not get his records played on the BBC, and he would take 6 months or more to try and get his records played on Radio Luxembourg, because there was a cartel of very few record companies who could produce and broadcast music. And this is where things begin to get a bit, why is all this so restricted? Because they were using AM radio was a very good telepathic control mechanism. I recognized this when I was listening to BBC Radio 1, because I could hear, I knew what the next record was going to be, because as the DJ was queuing up the song, he was thinking and listening to the next song. So as he thought that, those thoughts were going on AM radio.
Right.
You see? Now, the point about this is Ronan O'Reilly being a sort of thing, I'm bloody well going to sort this out. So he then managed to get hold of a radio ship which had just been used way up in Norway, and he then renamed it Radio Caroline. So you had two radio ships. You don't need to go into the whole history of this, but you ended up having two radio ships built and fitted out at Greenore, right on the Irish border, halfway up Northern Ireland, roughly Ireland on the east coast, roughly halfway between Dublin and Belfast, right on what became the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. Now, there's another little problem about this. Carlingford Lough also happened to be an alien base facility, and there were UFOs seen there, but a lot of people don't know that. So you have a connection between this awakening, this awareness, and broadcasting. So Radio Caroline and Radio Atlanta, they both decided to call themselves one name, ultimately called Radio Caroline North and Radio Caroline South, from a marketing point of view. And they had a big radio station in the Irish Sea covering the west coast in Ireland, and you had another radio station just off the coast of London near, I think, Felixstowe or whatever, and that covered basically the very bulk of the land of the population of the British Isles. You had a lot of people right up into Scotland and Northern Ireland and Ireland, and the main central population base in the middle of England. And they were transmitting pop music. And the BBC wasn't doing that. The BBC had a thing called Needle Time, highly restricted. This had a massive cultural awareness, explosion of awareness in the 1960s. Ultimately, the Labour government decided to get rid of this. So in 1967, it was all taken off the air, but Radio Caroline stayed on the air. And this continued. And then in the late 1970s, the same sort of thing was happening in Ireland. But from my personal perspective, I ended up being picked out of a hat to spend a year. I was doing electrical and electronic engineering. And ultimately, I built telephone exchanges. And then I moved to the BBC. But ultimately, I got a year out in Toronto on the States, so I could hear brilliant broadcasting on the radio from the United States, the way it should be broadcast. FM and AM radio, fantastic. And they had big, huge transmitters, 50,000 watt medium wave transmitters, and you could pick them up from all over the place, where we were up in Toronto. And that was amazing. And then I went back to Ireland, and I've got the final year of my course to finish. And lo and behold, a whole pile of pirate stations had exploded and started broadcasting in Dublin. Now, I'm the son of an orange man in Northern Ireland, and here's me. I'm telling you right now, do you see, I'm pointing my finger at you, woman. We know where you live, okay? You're meant to shudder and collapse, and, you're not meant to laugh. So anyway, I'm going down, from the north, going back down to Dublin from the north, okay? I'm telling you this now. And I'm on the radio, on pirate radio in Dublin called Big D. And we've actually got our anniversary next April. And the long and short of it is that continued until December 1988. And ultimately, cutting a long story short, me and my colleagues, we got the money, as £250,000 together, to build a 1.2 megawatt FM pirate border blaster right on the Irish border, broadcasting. I'm telling you this now. We were KISS FM 103.7, and this is from my telephone, which did all those phone calls. And that's the actual KISS sticker. And note, if you're a graphics artist, the two S's are kissing. You see that?
Yeah.
And then, of course, you've got the KISS. And the gap underneath that was for an advertising slogan. But that's KISS FM 103.7. And we had and there's pictures of me doing this, because I got fired by the BBC. I was working for the Broken Biscuit Company for 5 years. And I thought correctly that the British Broadcasting Corporation, some people call it the Broken Biscuit Company. Other people call it something else, which would be too rude to mention in public. And I thought, well, I'm going down to the Irish Republic here. that's a foreign country. I'm telling you now that the Republic of Ireland is a foreign country, and I was in British jurisdiction with the BBC in Belfast. So by hopping over the border, I thought I could have a good time and broadcast on AM 1008, so which got a clear channel right across Europe because the main station in Europe closed down. So our pirate based in Ireland got right across Europe in the middle of the night. Fantastic, great. And the FM, it was very difficult to get FM 50 miles into any target audience. Normally FM's for really close broadcasting. So we put up an antenna system with 24 antenna on it, crammed with as many aerials as the thing could hold, and cranked up the watts as much as we can. We didn't broadcast a particular level. We just get all the meters off to the right, crank it up, and blow the blasted. Well, to quote Michael Caine, we blew the bloody doors off. Now, unfortunately, the BBC felt that was somehow incompatible with my working practices at the BBC. So they did a thing called Fire Me, right? So that gave me all the time in the world to play transmitters, and it's great fun. You got big transmitters and they got cable as thick as this mug. You know, you got spanners to bolt the antenna cable onto the aerials. You know, it's big stuff and it's a lot of fun. And guess what? We had staff from Radio Caroline, which had just had its mast blown down, and we got some really good staff to work on the station Kiss FM on the border, and it's the BBC purely from the point of view of logistical journalism, not let's have a laugh and video our ex-employee we've just fired and put him on camera and burst out laughing behind the camera. So I was talking very seriously with my former colleagues on camera with the transmitters behind us, and they were creasing themselves laughing. It was all a bit of a laugh, but you know. So then that all finished and we came off the border and we all cried into our beer. And then the point was that this is a continuous thing. And we had this thing called the intelligence transfer sequence. This is an intelligence transfer sequence in progress. Now, that was something weird. And we cracked matrix. We were running 1.2 megawatts. We were running it full power. You could pick us up on FM in Scotland, west of England, and Dublin, because our signal had a number of what we call side lobes, but our primary highly focused beam was into Belfast. And we got a signal there, but we needed another 500 feet on the mast if we really wanted to do it properly. But, you know, that was good fun. So they took all the radio stations off the air in December 1988, and in February 1989, a little bitty TV station called Sky Channel became Sky Television. And I ended up getting on in that as well. The former absolute star of my eye, the bright of my eye, a lady called Stephanie Callister, who was on our hospital radio station, and she was on the BBC as well. We all suddenly ended up going to Sky TV. Even my mate who got the money, he was head of cameras and sets. So you had this clan of people from my station, who, you know, and a couple of the relatives, we're all in there at the very start of Sky TV. And what's more, our sound man had known Ronan O'Reilly before he built Radio Caroline. And here we are in Sky News on the air, seeing Maggie Thatcher, you know, literally die in front of us. And it was an amazing time to do that. I mean, I'm the person who told Rupert Murdoch, you've got 10 seconds to get out, Rupert, because everybody else was so bloody scared of him. This is when it didn't matter who you were. We're losing £10 million a week, for Christ's sake. Like, we're in the shits, right? And Rupert Murdoch is standing there with his with his shirt sleeves rolled up, standing in front of camera 2, having a chat with Kay Burley. And quite frankly, Kay Burley was one hell of a cracker. So I think nobody else, the whole production team were, oh yeah, what are we going to do? So I had to go in and say, Rupert, we're on air in 10 seconds. So I'm the only person who told Rupert Murdoch, you've got 10 seconds to get out. There were other people in Belfast who said, if they said that, it's usually because they're going to blow you up, But that was good fun, and it was great fun putting Sky on. But it also meant that I would talk about all this alien stuff. And we got a number of, I talked production thing. I mean, who's watching, but we got the first really good documentaries on air, because we got stuff on air that the BBC would never have touched. And we got really red hot stuff on air. And that was called the documentary. When we put these on in what we call the back half hour, Sky News was 24 hours a day, never wrong for long. We had a thing called the back half hour, and we did 12-hour shifts. This is blood and guts television. This is people screaming at each other, and but
I'm interested. Sorry, if you don't mind me just chiming in at this point. It's like what you were saying earlier on. There was a lot of a lot of the radio stations in the earlier days closed down, and then suddenly Sky News is born.
Yes.
I'd love to know, and obviously speaking about Rupert Murdoch, we know that he's one of the biggest media moguls around, and probably part of the control.
He's an independent media mogul. That's why they don't like him.
Right. So you're saying that he's actually not part of these other controlled media houses. Is that what you say?
He's independent, and that was the main thing. But I was running around trying to get something going in the background. And ultimately we got that going and met the right people and whatever. And we did the radio thing. And that was a huge... The transmitters were talking to me. If things were going wrong, I would get a feeling something would happen. And I was sort of like brought to the transmitters. Listen, the point is, there was some energy involved. And this is why this thing, KISF, the intelligence transfer thing. And intelligence transfer sequence is actually a computer protocol. I think that's where the phrase comes from. But point is, but it's very important in protocol, intelligence transfer, not ideas, but intelligence. This is very important about the ITS. You were given an opportunity of infinite power, and if you just did whatever you could, the basic rule on this, if you did whatever you could based on what your individual's efforts and circumstances were, no matter how big or how small, you got protection. However, the civilization so exposed, if it did not respond, would be taken out. Okay? So this was, if you did what you could, you got a lot of help and a lot of protection, which is why any government that ever raided those pirate stations was out of power within 6 months. The last thing Mrs. Thatcher did in 1989 was to have Radio Caroline raided on the high seas, and she got the Dutch to do it because the British were too scared to take out Radio Caroline. And what happened months later, Mrs. Thatcher was out of power. The same happened with the Prime Minister of Ireland and the Minister of Communications, who closed down all those radio stations in Ireland in December 1988. Charles Haughey, the Prime Minister, could never set foot back in Ireland because he would be arrested. And secondly, the Justice Minister and the Minister of Communications, he ended up going to jail. The same thing happened in Britain with a guy called John Stonehouse. John Stonehouse was the head of the Post and Telegraphs, and they jammed Radio Caroline when it was operating on a radio ship called Radio North Sea International. And that was the first time that the young people in England, the 18-year-olds, were given the vote, because up until that time, the vote, you had to be 21. So when that election came along, this was the first time that 18-year-olds could vote. And they just had all their fun taken away by the Labour government in the 1960s. So when it came to a vote, Radio Caroline went on the air during the election, especially with this other radio station, and they were voted out. And the man who did that, John Stonehouse, he did what's called a Reggie Perrin. There's a TV series on the BBC called Reggie Perrin, where a guy goes out to sea and fakes his own suicide by leaving his clothes behind on the beach and pretending to be drowned. And John Stonehouse then ultimately escaped down to Australia to sort of get out of the way. And ultimately that was a huge scandal. But that was an example of anybody who attacked the pirates got the wrist slapped, and the pirates got more resources to go forward. And that's how we were able to put this on, because we were raided. We were raided as a little radio station in Northern Ireland. While I was working for the BBC, I phoned it in. Hello, Kiss FM 102.7 has just been off the air. Now, there's no way that the BBC operator in the BBC that I would have maybe a cup of tea with in the canteen. Sorry, the BBC has a restaurant. Other people have a canteen. So anyway, it was all good fun, but there were protection mechanisms in there. So what happened was I actually spoke to Robert Maxwell. I was talking to him on the phone about putting some kind of big satellite operation on, possibly out of the Isle of Man. And I actually got to speak to the guy. That wouldn't work. So the only other person who would have been able to do this was going to be Rupert Murdoch. And for that reason, Sky Television was always protected. So no matter what was thrown at it, it would still be protected. And that happened, and that's the competitor at the time was British Satellite Broadcasting. That all went belly up. So the whole thing joined together one night, and two organizations losing 15 million a week between them rationalized things. So they were only losing 10 million pounds a week. But that's how that basically ended up working. And that was continuous right up to when I left Sky after 21 years, because the Chinese had been trying to access Sky Television. And they had done a whole lot of stuff, which is probably not a good thing to talk about right now, but that ultimately led to Murdoch being in Parliament in 2011 with his Chinese wife, who is an asset. And the assets go back to the DVD. Might see tongue, all that stuff. And there are other very, very dark alien forces involved with that, such as the Dalai Lama, and that connects with all of the stuff that's happening right now with Epstein, and all of that stuff connects with very, very, very bad ETs. So we're dealing with a situation where in the media, we have a situation where the only way that we got independent news, independent programming, a new fresh blood, was to create Sky, and that worked, and it worked very well. And there was a major attempt by the Chinese to infiltrate that in 2008, 9, and 10. That was thwarted, but ultimately Sky then was forced to break itself up, and ultimately has been bought by an American company called Comcast. But that thwarted Sky, and it did a lot of damage, because for like 5 years they couldn't sell, because the whole thing was, and that was a signature of when the ITS thing was shut down. And at that point, Sky was then open to other bidders, and they screwed up. And now you've got Netflix and Amazon and stuff, because that's the media. That's how it worked, and that's how it worked in the background. Oh, I can't hear you. You're muted, sweetheart. You're on mute.
Okay, I thought I'd taken it off. Sorry, are you
I
saying that? You do?
Somebody sent me a mug saying you're on mute. Such a few.
What a great idea. I think all of us podcasters need one of those. Anyway, are you saying that Murdoch Sky News was infiltrated by Murdoch's Chinese wife?
No, no.
Is that what you're saying?
More complicated than that. I'm truncating a lot of stuff. What happened was, and this is happening right now, actually, what I'm talking about is in progress in another situation, which I won't talk about. The Chinese, Murdoch had an operation the point about Murdoch was he has his views and whatever. Okay, so the point about it was that Murdoch was used, as far as the rest of the media industry and BBC and everybody else, Murdoch was used to break this subscription barrier of how you finance television, right? Because they've got this TV license thing here, and a lot of people are pissed off with the whole thing. So it also he was used to break the new technology, because the other lot had the Independent Broadcasting Authority had so completely screwed up British satellite television that they were so stuck in the old ways of doing things, taking years to break new technology. That's why we're stuck with DAB, digital audio broadcasting, absolute rubbish technology. It took something like 25 years to break that. At Sky, we were using robot transmission machines. These were barcode reading tape, right? That had a barcode on them, and we had 5 robot accessible, what we call Beta SP, Digibeta, ultimately broadcast cassette technologies, right? The point about these things is you had robot arms where it loaded a whole library of maybe 100 tapes, long tapes, short tapes, little 3-minute tapes for playing a commercial or a sting, and they had a barcode on it. So the machine read the barcode, stuck where that is, and then the scheduler said, right, that's how we're going to schedule the system. And that all came on a computer-based system which talked to the machines, the big Sony massive machines. And you had this arm which just went whoop, whoop, took the tape out and then slid it into the machines. That played according to the start and end time programmed on the barcode, and that went out to air, right? And then the next one would play, and then the next one would play, and then they would all start loading and unloading and tapes going everywhere. And so for the news machine, it was a thing called a beta cart, and all the news stories were all queued up there. And this was brand new technology. The serial number on the first machine was Sony 000000, 4 zeros, a lot of zeros, and 1. And that was the one for Sky One. And surprise, surprise, the next one for the next channel, which I think was Sky Movies, was 00000002. And then the next one after that was there was another one. There's another channel. It was or whatever it was. It was this sort of. There was another channel. I forget what it was. And that was 003. And then the fourth one was Sky News, and that was 0004. So this was the first brand new use of this technology, and it was all used, and Murdoch was used to break that new technology. And then all this stuff ultimately was then to, you see, the other thing was that Sky rented space on a Radio Luxembourg satellite. This is where Radio Luxembourg comes in, RTL, Astra. Those satellites were leased, and he used analog technology, but the BBC and the broadcasting people, so the main broadcasting, so we're talking technology, the British Satellite Broadcasting was forced to use a type of very high quality, but totally unique transmission system. And none of their chips worked in the first batch of their receivers. First, they cost a lot of money, only gave you 5 channels, whereas the ones cheap and cheerful things from Amstrad gave you 16 channels. And to be perfectly frank, it gave you access to European standards of late night broadcasting, which we don't have to go into now. That enhanced the ratings. People bought these things for 100 quid, they got them. Whereas the broadcasting authorities were so far behind, they insist on using proprietary, highly expensive, small number production chips, and a lot of those didn't work. So the main BSB thing, this huge thing, they had to buy all the satellites. They went out of business and everybody joined together and we had Sky. And then eventually we then had an encryption system, and then the Premiership was then created for this. And Premiership football only needed about 800,000 subscribers to break even. So this was the key to the whole change of sports and encryption technology. And that was a hackable system that came out of Israel, which meant an awful lot of people could watch these programs for free. And there's no way I was involved with putting up some of the satellite dishes with the pirate encoders so that people in a quick, they didn't want to pay Murdoch's subscription, but they wanted to be paid by Murdoch to do cricket. So there was nothing like being hypocritical. So that was a whole genre of how TV was broken, and then we did digital TV, and that was a huge change in broadcasting. And again, that was used because Murdoch's business acumen and the way he did things and got things to work, and the team that we had, a very small team of people we still would meet every so often. There's only like 30 or 40 of us max in a room that we did all this with at the very start.
Right.
It didn't matter who you were in the company, but we're all this sort of special team. And I think the last time we met was 25th anniversary. But that was a huge revolution in broadcasting, and that goes right back to Radio Caroline in 1963, fitting out a ship. But where they fitted the ship out, it's got ETs involved.
It's so interesting because it's not just the news anchors or radio and television and news magazine and newspaper outlets being given a certain narrative, right? It's not just like what we see it. That is part of the parcel. But what you're explaining here is, again, what I always say, it's such a well-oiled ship, and it's so well controlled and so well run that I mean, I want to say it's difficult to fault the way they do it because they've got every base covered, right? When it comes to pushing that narrative, it's like all of these boys' clubs, secret societies, etc. They all work together. They've all got every part, and media, as we know, is one of the biggest angles, right, that they need.
Well, this is the thing. As Murdoch and this cutting edge TV was cut its teeth, we were airing stuff with Yeltsin taking over Russia, the Russian Revolution with Yeltsin. Now, we were putting stuff out straight out of the back of the camera. The camera would shoot Yeltsin on a tank and waving flags, taking over the whole of Russia, right? Wow. That tape was taken straight out of the back of the camera as the cameraman shot it. It was shoved into a Beta SP player in the Moscow bureau, came straight from the camera, unedited, straight in, and we had the ability to put those machines live to air on Sky News, and we just kept putting this stuff out as the revolution happened. Now, we had a brilliant head of news there called John Alone, and that was cutting-edge television. And we did it with Margaret Thatcher. By the minute you saw Margaret Thatcher's fall, right? Now, the other broadcasters didn't air 98% of that stuff because we showed on Sky News how a popular revolt took down the Soviet Union to become the Russian Federation with Yeltsin. And this was when Gorbachev was deposed and humiliated. But that was when you had a parliament building with tanks taking over a country and waving, "We have won." And we did it on Sky News. Now, that was very, very carefully edited. About 6 hours later, on the BBC and on ITN, the news at 10, they did not like the independent. This is the key about the broadcasters here. They didn't like the people to see how you take over a massive government. And we did it as it happened on Sky News. Subsequently, people then came in as Sky developed and the money started to come in and the ratings started to really have a meaningful effect. And that was a different era. And now we have Comcast and these other companies running Sky now for the last 10 plus years. And it's not the same thing. And Sky's been very, very carefully taken over and controlled. And they're, practically as bad as Channel 4. It's very, to see what's going out versus what now YouTube are doing. And remember, YouTube took a hit. I lost my channel on YouTube, but there's stuff on YouTube. There's no way you'd get anything like that on. So the key to this was the creation of an independent transmission facility. And we had a really good little TV station called Controversial TV. And an awful lot of people we were putting out a whole lot of stuff about 9/11 on Controversial TV. Channel 200, I think it was. I think that slot is still available if people wanted to put that back. And that could only
Controversial TV. Is it still around?
It was known as Controversial TV, and that was in the analog, early free-to-air digital days. Okay. And that's where people like Ian R. Crane, the late Ian R. Crane, he passed away just during the COVID thing. And he did this thing called Alternative View Events. And that was a major, he did about 15 of those events, those big, very well-produced conferences, geopolitical stuff, very heavy duty stuff. And unfortunately, Ian got cancer, and he was in hospital during the COVID thing. And there were only 5 people in that hospital. There were no COVID victims in there whatsoever. As a consequence,
isn't that just horrendous? And again, I actually did a little snippet and on one of my drop-in with Shanti shows a couple of weeks back called Dancing During Lockdown or something.
Yeah.
And you see how many hospitals across the world had this one dance choreographed that they were all doing it together in A, empty hospitals, and B, during a time when there's supposed to be this crazy life eating pandemic that's going on, right? I mean, everyone is now learning how to do these new choreographed dances. I mean, I'm like, right, it's all well and good, that the nurses and the doctors or whatever are positive and what have you, and have a lovely moment in overflowing hospitals. You can see that. But at that stage, there was no overflow. It's like they were mocking us, Miles. It's like they showed us that to our faces.
That had a major effect. There's 2 little things about that. We had the Nightingale hospitals, the emergency hospitals, right? Now, this is where it gets there's lots of really sinister stuff in the background. One of the main big things about the London XL is this huge exhibition center. It's got about, I don't know, it's so big. It's got 2 tube stations between, or what they call Dockland Light railway stations, one at one end and another one at the other, because it's so big. Now, the thing about that was there's a thing called the BVE, the Broadcast Video Exhibition, I think it's called. And that was, there's another thing in the States called the NAB, NAB, National Association of Broadcasters, would have their big trade show showing off all the new things for people to buy, all the new toys for TV broadcasting. What happened was, in August 2019, the BVE announced it was cancelling its next show. Right? This is summer 2019. And then, of course, a lot of people would have seen this mock emergency in case there's a pandemic thing. I think in October 2019. I think this is the right years. So what happened was we then had the outbreak actual, okay? And everything, the shit hit the fan, okay? Now, amazingly, how did the broadcasters know in August or July, the year before, 6 months before it was going to break, how did they know that they weren't going to be having a show in the London XL, because the London XL was going to be the Nightingale Hospital? So that was planned at least 6 months, 9 months to a year before the whole thing happened. You see, one of the problems about television is you've got to have a planning meeting with people to make sure you've got cameras in place to make it look good on TV.
Yeah, of course,
so
yes.
You've got to tell certain people, we're going to be doing this so we can get that, to make sure you've got the facilities. It's very, very rare that, for instance, Sir, what's his name? Bob Geldof, nothing dodgy going on there, was able to do the whole Live Aid thing. Now, with all due respect, there's an awful lot of people pulling favors in for that show, but he has a few more little arms in the four, fingers in pies than we would necessarily imagine. I muted myself.
The way about life.
The way he, so I don't want to swear, but
you like to swear, it's okay. We're grown ups.
We don't need to talk about Holy Yates, and we don't need to talk about a certain Australian rock star who died in a particular way.
The NXS guy. But I mean, with the whole Bob Geldof, you know the story there, right? He raised something like $100 million, or $100,000. It was a lot of money. I don't remember exactly how much. For the then I can't remember.
Ethiopian starving kids or whatever.
Yes, Ethiopian Prime Minister Mengistu. That guy, instead of giving that money over to the way it was intended, he bought arms and he destroyed his neighbors with these highly effective guns and artillery weapons and stuff. That is what Bob Geldof's Live Aid and all those hundreds and thousands of singers that performed here in the 80s, that's what their money paid for the slaughter of Ethiopia's neighbors. That's what they paid for. Bob Geldof, and he was knighted after that.
Well, he would have been. He probably got a nice soul harvest for our leeching parasites which leech off us.
Yeah. It was horrific what happened. It was horrific.
It was interesting and what happened to well, Paula Yates and things. That was horrendous. I think they must have all found out and realized what was really going on.
I'm very interested, and I mean, it's such a super interesting conversation, and we've got like 5 or 10 minutes left before we need to wrap up today's show. But I would love to talk about the Dalai Lama, because I'm looking for, I mean, I've definitely done my own research into that. You know, as someone...
right. Since we've got a very little time left. So basically, I started the Basis Project because some friends that were involved with the documentaries that we put out on Sky News were part of the London UFO studies, and they knew a guy who was a security guard at a base called Peasmore in Berkshire, and in that base they were doing transgenic research, basically, to cut a long story short, they were making aliens, making greys under license. They were our version of aliens, with round eyes as opposed to the almond eyes. And these were being knocked off. They were called program-generated life forms, and they were being made for use on the lunar base, Britain's lunar base, which blows a whole lot of doors off things. So Britain had a lunar base. We were making aliens based on what the Germans were already doing in World War II, because this guy, Barry King, his father was MI6, and he was, it may not have been MI6, it could have been OSS, the Office of Secrets, whatever. And his job was to go and find these bases that the Germans were doing really heavy stuff. Bearing in mind, you're dealing with Kamler, or is it Kamler, and the esoteric, multiple esoteric technologies, and red mercury and all that, and the Glock and all that. They were doing that in Germany, and the Brits got that technology and brought it to Britain, and that involved ETs and greys, and they were in the underground bases here in England. So the whole point of the name of the documentary was No Defense UFOs, No Defense Significance. Cutting to the chase on that was telling you UFOs are of no defense significance. So that would tell you, oh, UFOs, no defense significance. They are of no defense significance because we are fully embedded with a whole bunch of ETs in our bases, right? So our defense forces and the whole Epstein thing, and Beverly mentioned a thing called a ranch. I've mentioned this, so I'm not going to talk this. It's too much. So the point is that it means that we were making aliens for the Five Eyes, so to speak, and that we're making them in labs here in Berkshire, just up the road from here, right? So that means that we are fully embedded with the ETs, right? Now, for instance, when I was involved with, I went to this magnificent conference in the States called the International UFO Congress, which ran for about 20 or 30 years. Really brilliant 8-day event, fantastic. That was cutting edge stuff, doing a really good job. Bob Brown and Wendell Stevens founded all that. So they were really doing a good job. The first time I went there, I came back here and I was grilled by a British press-ganged Belfast businessman, effectively pushed into the sci-spy realm. And he explained that any UFO stuff, they could pick up the phone, so to speak, and confirm whether it was one of theirs or one of ours. In other words, one of our ETs that we working with, or one of the other ETs. But cutting to the chase about the Dalai Lama, one of the key people I interviewed, and again, a lot of the people I interviewed don't last long. Sometimes the last thing they say is this is a guy called Chris Thomas. And cutting to the chase, he was involved with accessing the Akashic, and you had a group of races from a system, a twin sun system called the Velos system, which had two suns, and the wandering planet between those two suns, the Velos system, was called Nibiru. So this Nibiru that comes here is all absolute SH1T. Okay, so one of the two key races stayed behind. They came to here a long time ago with a view to colonizing and taking over the earth. They then had a change of and made a decision, and we're not going to colonize the earth, we're going to leave, and they went somewhere else. But they left behind a fairly large number, about 250,000 of the native Valon people, which split into two sub-races. One were the Anunnaki, and the others were the Hathors, right? So cutting to the chase, one group are the Anunnaki. They then took over all the relevant royal families and stuff like that, and they're what runs the show now, okay? The other lot restricted themselves to the Himalayas, and that makes the Dalai Lama one of that lot.
Wow.
And one of the reasons why the Chinese went into Tibet was because the society, the order of the way that the Tibet worked was of an extremely small elite race of rulers, and everything below that level were absolute scum slaves.
Right.
And that's what these creatures want to do to us now.
Right,
Dalai Lama
exactly the
and all
same.
that, very bad. And the recent trials with Epstein shows the Dalai Lama involved with all that, and a whole pile of others were in these videos, which are now being made, illustrating how wide the Epstein stuff is, which makes the Epstein material full head-on ET disclosure. But nobody's mentioning that except us here right now.
Makes a lot of sense, because we also know, and I mean, definitely, you know, in further conversations, I want to speak more with you about the Germans and the technology they used and how that came to be, because for me, I love to have that knowledge, because then we follow a thread, you know, when we can kind of understand, doesn't matter, you know, when we look at the secret societies, really at the end of the day, they all come from the same one. If you look at it, they can call themselves however many fancy names.
This is the point that Chris Thomas explained. He explained that at these high levels, that humans would join these societies and it would all be for a beneficial thing, and it's all blah, 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 very nice. And then there'd be, you get to a certain level and your body's swapped.
Yeah.
Your
exactly.
soul's taken out, and an Anunnaki goes in.
And definitely that would obviously, yeah, once you've made the relevant sacrifices, etc., etc. And I know definitely, and when we're looking at the Vril energy, we will talk about the Vril energy, you know, before as well. Makes a lot of sense about the Germans and going to the Himalayas and seeking the perfect Aryan race, right, which they thought was in the Tibetan.
And remember,
Tibetan
it's
people.
not blondes. Aryan is de facto remnants of Atlantis, and it's Aryan.
I was going to say
that's Ireland. That's why Ireland was suppressed so heavily. They've always hammered Ireland, and the DVD was responsible for.
That's the reason why.
Yeah, the famine in Ireland was done by the DVD poisoning the crops. And Ireland has no idea that they are basically a client state of one of the worst ruling elites on the planet. And they needed to hammer the Irish because of the connection, and the gypsy population, the gypsies, those seed races, there's certain races throughout Europe, hammered to make sure that they were controlled. There's a lot of effort gone into making sure the Irish are kept down. That's where we have High Brazil and all that off the southwest coast of Ireland. There's a lot of in there, and the Irish de facto hammered with the injection, with one of the highest uptakes of that, and they still don't realize they've all been screwed over. That's all that in a nutshell.
I definitely would love to look more, and you know, I've spoken about also the Irish, the Celts, and why the Irish have been so hectically abused. And it explains exactly why. Yeah, we're talking, you know, we're now opening up into that entry point, and we're able to see what's been going on, and we can start connecting the dots. For me, that is super important, because once we do that,
again,
we then flip the lid.
You've got Saint Patrick, who's not a saint. He was a massacre. He massacred the firstborn. His job was sent by the Pope was to massacre the so-called Celtic Church, the original, effectively Orthodox Christians in Ireland, right? And he went back to the Vatican and said, "This is dreadful," and he said, "You go back there till you do it." So this connects with the ancient Druidic so-called Christianity, and the last vestige of that was in Syria, and the recent wars in Syria has been to hunt down and kill those vestiges of that very early original Christian set in which came from the ancient Druids in Ireland, the Celtic Church, so-called Celtic Church. And remember, an awful lot of Celtic stuff's been attributed to the Celts, which isn't. But that was the key to that arrangement. And again, the slaughter of Druids in Wales, and the massacre of any of that aspect of like the Cathars. A lot of people have heard about the Cathars, but what happened in England and into Wales, the blood literally made the Irish Sea red in the coast. There's a bloody slaughter involved here. And one of the biggest battles in Ireland ever was not too far away from my hometown in Lurgan, a little place called Moira. A huge battle, very little known about it, involved this whole ancient slaughter of things 1,500 years ago, or maybe BC. A lot of hidden history there, a lot of blood spilled. And the people who did it are around now.
Oh, what?
They are being exposed now, but we are in a bloody war, a very bloody war. And right now, we'll have to see where the things kick off with Iran again. That's another seed civilization to be wiped out, and we'll have to see whether that is going to proceed or not.
I really look forward to
happy days.
Very happy days. But I look forward to unpacking all of these amazing things further with you. Kiss.
That was good fun.
And I look forward to that. I know you've also got some very interesting. Thank you, Miles.
Well, I'm very honored to be on your show. Thank you.
No, the honor is all mine. You are absolutely fascinating, and you have got so much information. And I really look forward to our viewers getting to know you and more of what you do and your brilliance, because you really are a brilliant human being. And I love how that you also fearlessly come out here.
You used to have hair. God help us all.
Doesn't matter, you're still cool.
I was scary, People saw me with a beard and a hair, scared you. But Jesus.
Did you look like Gandalf?
Yeah, a little bit like that. I grew my hair. I grew the beard and the hair in Canada. I loved being in Toronto. Toronto was magnificent, and it's a wonderful country. And it's dreadful what they're going through now with this.
No, exactly.
Dreadful things. Canada was brilliant. I loved it. If there was any place I was going to emigrate to, it would have been Canada. Anyway.
Wow. Right. Look forward to next time, Miles. And guys, I will see you in 30 minutes with Danny Henderson. We're doing birthday vibes tonight. So join
bloody
us.
Hell, bloody da, darling.
No, bloody darling. I love it. I love it. The girls are having a birthday party tonight. Danny's birthday today, mine tomorrow. We, as Miles, you're saying, we are troublemakers. And when troublemakers unite, you got to know we have lots of fun. And that's when shift happens. Like, you know, the shift happens when troublemakers unite. It's just the way we like it. Miles, thank you so much. But before you sign off, is there anything else you'd like to say? And maybe just tell our viewers.
Until the next exciting episode of the Bases Project, we have Bases 2026. It's going to be the third weekend of June during the solstice. We're going to have more troublemakers there. We won't be announcing the full list of la-di-das. I think we've got confirmed a couple of hot people. I think Beverly, you know, she's lovely, you know, and she came the whole way down here to Devices. God help the woman, and God help her. And we got some really hot guests on that, and we're going to bring Sean Bond and the beautiful and fantastic Maria Wheatley and her extremely independent, wonderful work about Stonehenge, long skull people of Stonehenge, and there's a Sean Bond. No connection with Basildon Bond or James Bond, but Basildon Bond's as a envelope manufacturer. Anyway, so he's got talking about the long skulls in America and Mexico. He's digging an awful lot of stuff up there, including artifacts of 8-legged ETs, octoforms, and he's got a lot of stuff from there. So that'll be all part of the exciting Bases 2026.
Well,
June,
looking forward.
19th, 18th, and the 19th, 20th, and 21st of June in Bouverie Hall in Pusey. Tickets will be on sale sometime around there.
It's like 5 months from now, and that time flies. So, guys, check it out. And Miles, all your details are scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Check out your website. Any shows and anything you're doing?
Well, we're doing a whole new thing. We're going to have a locally in Devices. We're going to have people speaking. It's called Bases Talks. First Thursday of every month at the Rugby Club in Devices, and we're going to have this character here. Club. We're going to have the guy writing that. We're going to have that in the Rugby Club, and we're also going to have the guy who wrote this. He's going to be talking 7 p.m. till 10 every first Thursday in Devices Rugby Club for a tenner. And that's an opportunity to meet speakers. We've got another lovely lady who's mad as hell because she had all her babies taken, Tina Bird. I think you may have had her on. I'm not sure.
No.
So she'll be speaking the first Thursday of every month. The first one will be March the 5th. In Devices Rugby Club. That's for people in the area. And if anybody wants this very rare book by James Casbolt, I've got a few of these left. This is part 2 of his Agent Buried Alive book. And this is very, very rare. What is that about? That is about James Casbolt, who's one of the super soldiers of Britain who ended up joining the U.S. Army and had very bad times. He's just out of jail in England he was put in jail a long time.
Can you keep me one, please? Is it online or do I need to order a physical book?
This is a physical book. I can send you a copy. These are signed.
Yeah, I'd like that, please. Can you please do you have part 1 as well?
No, the part 1 is online somewhere. It's okay. It was launched in several different versions. I think it should be about 13 chapters in that. But remember, he was jailed as part of a key British super soldier training program, and they were trained down in Burnworthy Manor near Taunton, James was used specifically to knock out reptilians in terms of his ability to retain consciousness when doing an attack to assassinate a reptilian ET hiding in plain sight. Because what what they do is they object to being killed. Some strangely, some kind of natural thing, not being, but they would be able to block a normal person's mind. James was trained so he would do that, and he went through a lot of stuff. And there's a whole new generation of these super soldiers. So I can send that to you if you send me the address, and I'll send you a free CD with it as well. His music, which is a rap,
three things.
And the music contains words which are disclosure words. He still has to be very careful what he says. But anyway, this book, there's only 100 of them, and Bob Osborne publishes that under his title "Rebel Not Taken."
Yeah, I'd like one, please. I'm trying to find a picture here that I have. That picture of the kissing rocks. There's a rock in Namibia that looks exactly like that. And I'm trying to find it here because I want to show you. But now, of course, I can't find it when I need it. Ah, there it is. Check.
There's a mermaid.
Can you see that?
Yeah. Wow.
There's two rocks. I don't know, this light seems bad. But if you look, there we go.
Yeah.
That's in Namibia.
Well, those rocks will have things in them. This is there's a film made. This has got all the thing about this Zener thing is he has made a film about it, and it's unique to the area, but it involves a hell of a lot of names. And he's now writing a fuller version of that Zener Spirit of Place from Agent Rebel Not Taken is the website. Perfect. That's because his family rebelled against the British Crown. He was part of a revolution a long time ago, and they were all crucified on the whole road to Parliament, and a few of them escaped. And they were then officially designated as Rebel Not Taken. So they had and they I think ended up going to Australia and things like that. We do have a little bit of a certificate problem with the website at the moment, but we're fixing that.
Okay, so website under.
The main website is basistv.org. All the legacy media, which we had to reload, has still a lot of stuff still missing, needs to be reloaded, is basistv.com, and that's got a paywall of about $5, I think.
Okay. Cool. Well, I look forward to seeing you.
Good.
I look forward to seeing you, hopefully, maybe next week, Monday, same time. Shall we have a date then?
Yeah, we can do the same exciting episode. Same channel, same time.
We got a date, Miles. We got a date. Everybody, you want to come join us? You want to come double date with us?
Yeah, double date, yeah. And I want to hear all about the party, okay?
Yeah, I'll tell you for sure.
And Danny's got her big thing. Danny's got her big thing, and she's going to do a great job. And she's got really big people there. That's a big deal. The best of luck to her.
Yeah, Danny's doing a lot.
Bloody marvelous.
Yeah, totally.
The good thing about the conference in December was a lot of key people who make other conferences were able to talk and meet each other and stuff. We've got another brilliant woman here called Karen Dodd, and another brilliant woman who I'm helping out called Jane Henderson. Dodgy name, Henderson. Very dodgy name. Yeah.
Very. The Janes and the Dannies. I'm not sure.
See, a Jane Henderson. There were two Hendersons in the room at the same time. That's dodgy. That's critical mass. Some supplies the place didn't get raided, or Chinook helicopter, or
exactly. Maybe they were keeping them away. Who knows? Anything's possible.
We were actually hacked. My video equipment was actually hacked during the show, and whoever hacked us did a little clever thing with our video equipment, so it did the wrong thing. But the only way to stop that was to pull the internet cable out, and then suddenly we got control of our equipment again.
I love it.
These little jokers in GCHQ, they've got nothing else better to do. I think it's bloody scandalous that the defense industry is shilly-shallying and messing around like this. It's a bloody disgrace.
A bloody disgrace. It totally is. I agree with you, Miles. And on that note, we will be shilly-shallying with lots of shenanigans next week. Same place, same time. We'll see you all back then. God bless you all. Take good care. And yeah, if you can't be good, just be good at it.